The engines roared like thunder above the clouds, a sound most passengers trusted without thought, a rhythm of safety in the skies. But on this flight at 35,000 feet, the sound shifted. It sputtered, faltered, and then silence pressed heavy against the cabin walls. Oxygen masks fell like startled ghosts. Alarms wailed in a chorus of panic, and passengers clutched their seats as fear rippled from row to row. In that moment of chaos, when even the trained pilots in the cockpit fought against the dying controls, all eyes searched for hope. And then, from the middle row, seat 14B, just a girl most hadn't noticed before, rose something unexpected. She was only a passenger. No wings on her chest, no authority to command. Yet when the plane failed and the world seemed to fall, even the pilots turned to her, their eyes wide, waiting for her to take control. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the extraordinary courage hidden within ordinary people, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Armed Forces Stories. Stories like this remind us that heroes are not always the ones we expect. Her name was Ava Reynolds, just 17 years old, traveling alone for the first time. She had boarded quietly, a book clutched in her hands, her hair tied back, the world unaware of what rested in her past. Few knew she was the daughter of a decorated Air Force pilot who had once flown combat missions across dangerous skies. She had spent her childhood inside the hum of hangars, her weekends in simulator cockpits, her evenings watching her father sketch flight patterns on napkins as if they were bedtime stories. To her, the controls of an aircraft were not unfamiliar. They were a language she had learned long before she could drive a car. Still, she never imagined that one day those lessons would become the thread between life and death for hundreds of strangers trapped in a failing aircraft. As the aircraft shook violently, Ava felt her heart race, her body trembling like the others. But deep inside, something different stirred. She had seen this before, not in reality, but in hours of practice, in simulator drills where her father had forced her to stay calm under simulated crises. She remembered his words. Panic kills faster than failure. Breathe, then act. Around her, passengers screamed, the air masks tangled in trembling hands, and flight attendants clung to the rails to stay upright. Somewhere ahead, the captain's voice cracked through the intercom, strained and breaking. "We've lost hydraulics. Stand by." Ava knew what that meant. It wasn't just turbulence. It wasn't just a scare. The plane was dying. She moved before she thought, her legs carrying her toward the cockpit as passengers stared in confusion. Some yelled for her to sit, to stay down, but she pressed forward, every step fueled by something stronger than fear. When she reached the reinforced door, one of the attendants hesitated, but the sight of Ava's steady eyes, her voice calm yet urgent, convinced them. Inside, the cockpit was chaos. Lights flashing red, controls stiff under the desperate grip of two men who had trained their whole lives for this moment. And yet, when Ava spoke, her voice steady but filled with resolve, they turned. It was not authority that made them listen, but the unshakable calm that cut through panic like a blade. Her hands hovered above the controls, and suddenly she wasn't a teenage girl anymore. She was the reflection of her father, the product of every hour he had poured into her training. The pilots gave her space, shock in their eyes, but also something else. Trust. Ava's fingers moved quickly, resetting systems, adjusting pitch, coaxing life from the machine that had nearly become a coffin. The cabin outside shifted from screams to silence, passengers gripping the armrests, watching as their fate now rested in the hands of someone they had seen minutes before as nothing more than a quiet girl in a window seat. The battle for control stretched long, each second a weight of eternity. The plane dropped thousands of feet, clouds rushing past like the blur of nightmares. Sweat streaked Ava's brow, her breaths shallow yet precise, as she adjusted flaps, rerouted power, and whispered the instructions she had memorized years ago. The pilots assisted where they could, but more than once their eyes flicked to her, stunned at the confidence in her movements, as if she had been born for this moment. And in truth, she had, because some heroes are not forged in combat, but in the quiet devotion of preparation that no one sees, until the world demands it. When the ground loomed closer, Ava's mind slowed to clarity. She spotted a flat stretch of earth, an emergency landing site that wasn't a runway, but could be salvation. Her hands moved as though guided by something greater than instinct, balancing descent with precision, ignoring the voices of fear that tried to creep into her mind. The wheels screeched, metal groaned, and the world shook violently as the plane touched down, skidding across dirt and grass until it finally, mercifully, stopped. Silence fell, broken only by the sound of sobs, prayers, and the overwhelming realization that they had lived. And when the cabin doors opened, the first rays of sunlight poured across a scene no one would ever forget. News of what happened spread across the globe in hours. They called her the passenger who saved a flight, but to those who sat in those seats, she was something more. She was proof that courage does not wait for permission, that sometimes strength lies hidden in those we overlook. The pilots themselves, men decorated and trained to face the unthinkable, admitted openly that they had looked to her, trusted her, because in that moment, she was the only one who could. Ava, the girl from seat 14B, had turned terror into triumph and given strangers the greatest gift of all, a second chance at life. In the days that followed, Ava struggled to grasp the enormity of it all. Reporters hounded her, crowds applauded her, but what she remembered most were the quiet tears of passengers who hugged her, their voices breaking as they said thank you. And in her heart, she thought of her father, who once told her that the true measure of a pilot wasn't medals or missions, but the lives you kept safe. She had never flown a mission, never worn the uniform, but in one impossible day, she had lived those words. And so, this story becomes more than a headline. It becomes a reminder that sometimes the hero of a flight, of a moment, of a life, is not the one with the title, but the one with the heart to rise when the world falls. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Armed Forces Stories. These are the moments worth remembering, the untold truths that remind us of the extraordinary strength hidden in ordinary people. And before we close, I have a special request. Leave a comment below. Tell us what you felt when Ava took control, or share a moment when someone unexpected stepped up and became a hero in your life. Your words may inspire another. Thank you for watching, and remember, heroes are everywhere, sometimes even in seat 14B.